I'm Mike Snyder, even though Joe insists on saying Schneider. I'm a forester. I live here in Stowe. We are joining the Northwoods Whitetails group today in Sterling Forest, a town forest in Stowe. More on that in a moment. Joey's insisting that I tell you that what am I? I am a recovering Commissioner of Forest, Parks, and Recreation for the state of Vermont, and have been, prior to that, was a county forester for the state, giving technical stewardship advice and assistance to private landowners. And during that time, I got involved here as a local Stowe resident, volunteering on the Conservation Commission and in other ways to, when the town chose to buy this forest and put it under conservation easement with Vermont Land Trust and own it and manage it as a town forest with multiple goals, including a basic use of ecological forestry for, again, multiple goals, from habitat enhancement, recreational access and enhancement, forest health maintenance, timber production for local economic use, and demonstration, science, education, and all of these things have been happening over the last, how many years? We did this in the mid-90s, purchased it, and anyway, I played a role as a volunteer and as county forester, helping to manage the forest for the town, which in my part largely involved doing an inventory, writing a management plan that then proposed 3 phases of timber harvesting to demonstrate, test, and implement techniques we call foresters for the birds, which is a way of integrating songbird habitat in the woods with traditional timber management approaches. It's wildly successful, and Sterling Forest has played a big role as a place for foresters to learn and share these techniques. And I'm really psyched to be walking out here with you guys today to look at some uncut forest and then look at some of the cut areas to see the difference and explain the benefits and why we're doing it.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
That was great.
That was longer.
He's also an avid deer hunter of the north.
Oh yeah, love it.
Not opposed to hunting some does around here. But,
no, like that too.
But your love for deer hunting, whitetail hunting, track and box. Northern Vermont,
yes,
Northern New Hampshire.
It's deep love. It's getting stronger. I want to acknowledge, especially for those who may be new to it or not into it. I wasn't born this way. Wasn't raised this way. I'm the first hunter in my family. I'm really lucky to have fallen in with some really great folks from the North Country who didn't have to teach me. They showed me how much was involved and really caught my imagination and let me join them at camp. And it's been decades now together. As everyone knows, great stories, time in the woods, time at camp. And every year my love and enjoyment for deer hunting in the woods has increased, and it continues. I'm glad you reminded me of that.
And this year you're going to shoot your first 200-pound buck.
That would be,
the bar
if you know that,
at 186,
I'm happy, right? 186 is where I've topped out, and I have to say, it's a personal goal, sure, yeah. 200-pounder, yeah. And of course I want it to go right. I want to find it. I want to track it. I want to, outdo it in the woods, and then hopefully have you and others around to help me get it out.
Heck yeah! Well, let's go check out this forest.
We're here, ladies and gentlemen. We are here. Welcome to Sterling Forest, town of Stowe, municipal forest. Off to our right here is an excellent example of a middle-aged, not even middle-aged, late adolescent garden variety Vermont northern hardwood on post-agricultural land stand of trees. And that's really what it is kind of at this point, is a stand of trees. And what I mean is, it's not much more than that. It's a pretty simplistic forest. And yeah, we've got some sugar maple poles, a larger black cherry that was probably one of the first to arrive on the site after it was open ag land, pastured. Some small saw timber size sugar maple, and a whole bunch of soft maple, red maple. It's really dominated by those. Sugar maple, red maple, a little bit of black cherry, a couple of ash. The point is, they're all the same size. There's only a few species. They're all the same size, more or less. They're doing great. They're nothing wrong with them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. It's really more about what's not here. From my standpoint, just I should be having to push some things away more to walk a few strides. In a fully functioning, healthy forest that's got sort of maximum forest power and possibility, you want to have more trees of different sizes here and sort of fill up the vertical space. Right now, it's a great place for a flycatcher, a phoebe, birds that catch flies. They love to dart around and into the openings, pick off some insects, go back to their feeding spot or their nests. Be good for them, maybe, but no place for a black-throated blue warbler, for example, to nest down here, and not much for the deer to eat. Most obviously.
Is there really anything for them to?
I would say, is there really anything?
There's hardly anything.
There's hardly anything.
Moose, bears, deer.
And so that's not great for those critters.
There's a little bit of turkey habitat in here, right? This is a place that you're going to find a bird roost in some of these great big maples.
And I imagine we would have to go far to see some scratchings even. Right.
They'll pick the seeds first thing,
This is a very typical, kind of condition of much of Vermont's and really northern New England's generalized landscape condition of late adolescent. It's 80 to 110 years old, mostly speaking, generally speaking, lots of outliers and examples here and there, but broadly speaking, we have a lot of this. Late adolescent, bordering on middle-aged, northern hardwood forest on post-agricultural lands. And again, that's awesome. It gives us a lot, and there's a lot to work with here. I'm simply pausing here to point out that this is included in this general condition is a lot of stuff like this where it's kind of stagnant. We foresters call it the stem exclusion stage, where the canopy closes off with leaves everywhere, which is, they're doing their job, and that's great. It's cooler in the woods, right? But
with that, nothing will grow on the ground.
Yeah, well, something you have to try harder to get things growing. Beech, shade tolerant, it'll grow if it's established under here. Now, not everybody loves to grow beech, but beech nuts are awfully good for a lot of animals. So anyway, hemlock, very shade tolerant, could grow in this understory and provide a little bit of something to get jump started back to a more fully functioning stand of a forest.
Something like that
plot.
Cherry tree right there. How old is that cherry tree, you think?
Probably not as old as you might think based on, it looks, it's large, it's good diameter on it, but it was probably open grown and fast growing. So I'm going to say that's probably, I don't know, these maples, that's probably 80 years old maybe.
And is it serving a purpose
75?
at this point?
It is providing some species diversity in this place. It's being something different, something additional.
Yep.
Biologically, sure, it's producing flowers for pollinators, and it's producing fruits, cherries, that are eaten by all kinds of critters. So it's doing its thing. It's a native. It belongs here. It fills a role early on. You're not going to find a lot of it in a big old forest. Kind of closer to the live fast, die young approach, like aspen, poplars do. They're sort of classic in that way.
Yep.
But anyway, just making the point that there's not much going on in the understory or the mid-story. There's a canopy that closes off, and a lot of the forest throughout the region is in this condition. Not every acre, but it's just not hard to find stuff that's like this or a lot like this, which is to set us up to go look at an area just through the woods a piece here where it looked a lot like this, and we went in and did some silviculture, forestry with an intentional approach, and in this case specifically implementing and demonstrating a toolkit called Foresters for the Birds, which is something we developed when I worked with the department, with partners at Audubon, Vermont, to bring foresters and conservation biologists together to figure out how to integrate songbird habitat into a forest management inventory, a forest management plan, and forest management practices. So it's silviculture, which is the art and science, briefly put, of initiating, growing, tending, attempting to control the composition, growth, and structure of forests through a principal technique using various logging practices to manage the forest. That's silviculture. And this silviculture with birds in mind was this idea to kind of integrate more than just timber or more than just songbird habitat, but to combine them and get some things done. And we implemented that here at Sterling Forest as a demonstration site, using some techniques of patch cutting with reserves, keeping some trees in those patches to jumpstart more complexity, diversity, and ecological productivity on the site, sites like these, to make them, so it's stark when you see nothing here and we're going to go where we can hardly walk through because there's so much new growth of a variety of native species.
Before this patch cut took place, these multiple patch cuts, you had a lot of backlash about this forest, cutting it, right? Why? Just people didn't want their trees cut, they didn't understand what it could bring?
Sure, yeah, all of the above. There has been, yes, so just to establish, there were 3 phases of this demonstration work that I was involved in here on behalf of the town of Stowe, working with Vermont Land Trust that holds a conservation easement on it. And I want to point out one of their foresters, Dan Kilborn, was very instrumental, particularly in this last phase 3 of demonstrating these practices. Dan, by the way, is also evidence-based. According to the evidence, a heck of a whitetail hunter.
Oh, really?
Yes, he is.
Somebody I'll have to meet.
Yeah, he lives near you.
That's good.
Anyway,
Good country.
so when we bought the property as a town, I was involved then and was a voice for, hey, this is something we want to have built into the plan for this place, is that we're going to do timber harvesting, silviculture, habitat management, enhancement, and demonstrate best practices. So that's been part of the plan since the town bought it, and it's sanctioned by the elected officials, the select board. And they've given me approval back then through the Conservation Commission, subsequently as a volunteer and as a county forester, to do the management planning and implement some of this stuff. And when we started to talk about, okay, now we said we'd do this, now it's time to do some things, it was at the other end of the property, which is 1,700 acres, off the Catamount Trail, popular recreational route. There was, wait, what are you talking about? So we had to start there with, remember, we bought it, and among other things, this is part of the plan for this place. Now we're going to start. In that first phase, though, rather than jumping in with skidders and mechanical harvesters, we started with 2 men with chainsaws working with horses in the woods, drawing the logs, skidding them with horses to the main route, which is the Catamount Trail, an old road through there, with permission from the Catamount Trail Association to run a skidder back and forth, big skidder. So they were bunching with the horses, as we call it, and then skidding to the landing, which is the park, created a parking lot. So at that time, was just very intentional. Went to the Stowe Reporter, the local paper, and said, we're doing this, like to be upfront about it. We want let all the neighbors know, and now more publicly. So they did a story on it. What's the plan out there? And sure, that brought more questions. And by the way, I had to ask permission to skid on the Catamount Trail because they had a recreational easement across it, and they kind of control that, but could allow it with permission. And they said, well, you'll leave a beauty strip, right, along the sides. What we call that is a visual buffer, leaving uncut trees so that we can hide the silviculture. And I was like, well, that's kind of missing the point. We are proud of what we're doing, and it's educational, and we want skiers to see the work, and maybe we put signs out and lead tours, and they could ask questions, and we could help everybody move along here. So that's what we did. The Stowe Reporter did an awesome job. Of course, the horses were brilliant because people like that.
Bring it. Yeah.
Gar Anderson, the late Gar Anderson, and his family were kind enough to let us pasture the horses in his little pasture they had for horses up there. So it was just this community-based thing. The paper did a nice story with beautiful photographs of the men and horses working in the woods. Some talking gas bag forester explaining it, or trying to. So that's where it starts. You've asked a really important thing here. It's like, and yes, people push back, but we started with we're going to be proud of this. We're not going to be ashamed of it. We're not going to trick people or hide. We're going to be very open about it.
Most folks, the backlash, it just comes from the uneducated.
Unknown. That's right. And so it gets a little bit more complicated. That went really great. We moved over to do phase 2. now with a skidder and a little bit more happening. And we got more people saying, what the whatever is going on here? Come on. And so we had to explain. I spent a lot of time walking with people, answering their questions. And yeah, some people still just not liking it. We get to phase 3. Now we're using harvester, you know, a cut to length harvester that's a machine, you know, operated by a person in a cab on tracks, highly sophisticated, production oriented. And, you know, that's a scale. Each one is scaled up, and each time the pushback has scaled up. You heard it from a neighbor right here saying, well, not everybody loves that.
Yeah.
She was wonderfully supportive, but so I'm just trying to acknowledge, yes, we're doing all of this in this sort of general backdrop of increasing opposition to doing this. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, in my time on the planet, especially as a forester. And here, just an example of trying to stay with it, small steps, be good about it, be proud, but be professional, do it well, show results, like we're serious about it. And here is an example where we've overcome that pushback. Even while all around us it's getting louder, there's more heat, less light, there's just a lot of hot opinions based on very small understanding. Mm-hmm. And I'm big on trying to grow the understanding, because I think then people can make their own choices. Yeah. But they'll be informed choices based on reality, not some myth of we need old forests that are nothing but big giant trees out here and nothing in the understory, because that's not natural at all. That's not ecologically functional either.
Nor is it good for anything that lives in the forest, right?
No.
Like you can hear this right now when we were talking about this forest. Everything that you hear right now is what, 30 to 60 feet in the air.
Bingo.
Right? Let's
Absolutely.
go walk into that other forest and see where those noises are.
Put your earmuffs on.
Okay.
It's going to be loud in there.
Let's go check it out.
Teeming with life.
We're going to go over here. It's going to be a different world.
That's right.
No value in the timber world.
Economic value, that's right.
But the value and purpose that it serves now for plenty of critters that probably live in there.
Totally.
Squirrels,
oh yeah,
chipmunks.
Great
mice.
place for a bear to go pawing around and ripping it apart.
Yep.
I mean, they're busy down in town in the dumpsters, but when they're done with that, they can come through here and it'd
Aren't
be
they ever?
organic and free range. Yeah.
There'll be one rummaging around up here.
Yeah, I don't want you to get lost. You know where you are? Do you want me to show you where we are?
I may need that.
This is just a harvest planning map for the phase 3 of the Silviculture with Birds in Mind, Foresters for the Birds project. We drove up Maple Run Lane from Stowe, and there's a corner of it we looked at a little bit prior, but we continued up here to the corner, parked, and we've walked in, and we are just in here where we're going to see these 2 patches and maybe walk up in here and see a couple more. So the yellow hashes are where are the polygons within which we cut all the trees except for some very specific instances where we might have kept some. The blue hash marks are stay out, it's super wet, and those are marshy areas that we work around or within, but try not to impact. So it's a mosaic of these little patches that were put in, and it's 6 growing seasons now, I think, since it was harvested. And, you know, at first it's a change from what was before, and it's abrupt, and as we're going to go and see, it softens very quickly as the regrowth occurs, from the first ferns and wildflowers to saplings, sprouts from stumps and roots suckering, and then native seeds and seedlings taking off in the understory. And it's almost impenetrable now, which is really fun to see, because that was kind of the whole point, was to reinitiate, to regenerate new trees in these openings, while also jump-starting what I call the recomplexification of the forest, from this sort of simple, stagnant structure of arrangement and sizes of trees to a more mix of different ages and different sizes and different species, more diverse, more complex, more resilient, and more productive. Red-eyed vireo, black-throated blue warbler, and Vermont state bird, the hermit thrush, all singing to us mid-morning. It's not even early. They weren't here before. They're here now.
You hear how much lower they are, right? In all this understory.
Awesome. So we're gonna head up in here, poke along the edge of the skid trail, and see what you see. I hope it'll be pretty obvious that stuff's going on. And I love being able to look through uncut woods over here to another patch just down there where we'll make our way around to and see what they all look like.
It's nice to see some conifers coming up and whatnot.
I
Get a little bit of spruce in
love
there.
seeing the spruce in there. I really do.
Now down lower there was a bunch of fir.
Yep.
We'll have to get down in there
Yep.
and
And
check
then
it
there's
out
more
and see how
again
much it's
up higher.
Yep, see how much it's coming up. I think you should talk about this right here. What right there in front of you? What is that? On the ground.
Right here? Fern?
Well, there's something just laying right there. This is
This is Happy Forester is what this is.
yeah. I mean, your job is how should I say it? You've completed your mission.
Well, the first phase of it, we got it going. We'll see where it grows from here, but by any measure, this is what we intended. This is what we hoped for. We believe that by popping a hole in the overstory in different places across a very homogeneous or uniform forest, we add diversity, horizontal diversity, untouched, touched, untouched, touched. And in these touched openings, we were thoughtful about where we put them. We put them where there was either no regeneration in the understory, and we wanted to get more, or where there was some, but it was being suppressed by the canopy. And in addition to placing them, we thought about the size of them and what's on the edges of them, and what could we leave to enhance the regrowth within each patch. So this is a patch cut of about 1.5 acres, where the idea was cut all the trees, we're not cutting 1-inch trees, but trees of 6 inches or more, all we're going to get cut diameter. Except we kept some black cherry that happened to be in there. You see a nice red spruce with a beautiful top on the other side. Another cherry here. You might see a bit of a yellow birch over there. Those are 3 species that produce a lot of seed that's good for lots of different animals. They also make good trees that are native and we want out here. So we kept those to provide seed, perch sites, foraging sites, potential of eventual recruitment as standing dead and then down later, way out. And also to cast a little bit of shade so that the patches don't just completely burn up. They can be a bit harsh going from closed canopy to fully open. So there's this mix. We look for places to put the patches where it makes sense based on ground conditions, the vegetation or lack thereof in the understory. And then we mark the circle to be, the polygon to be cut. And we put pink flags on the trees we don't want cut. And
those ones that you don't want to cut, you're using as seedlings.
Seed or seed producers,
Yep,
or
cover.
Also place for up there more vertical structure to retain,
Yep.
and then to provide a little bit of shade on the understory. But seeing, plenty of striped maple, of course, is going to come in, was here, and is responding to the opening. But we were featuring, when we see red spruce and balsam fir mixed in with aspens, I see red maple, I see sugar maple happening. We'll poke our way through here, a little ash on the side. It's just a lot going on, and it's, again, what we wanted was to go from, picture that part where we were, where there's nothing in the understory, waving my hands around, and now you can't, it's going to be hard to walk through here. And that's what we wanted.
This is a prime example of that stump right there. What is that you cut in there? Was that looks maybe like a hemlock? What is that?
I don't know, but is that a rub?
Yeah, that's a rub. You might want to.
And note that the forester saw it before
Yeah.
That's a stump.
Yeah, but what is it? A hemlock?
That looks like poplar.
Poplar?
Let me see. Oh no. Yeah, that was aspen.
It was aspen?
Yep.
So you've cut that tree, and now look what's growing up around it.
Yeah,
You've
sprouts.
opened that canopy. You've opened that canopy up, and now you got fir growing and
Aspen sprouts.
Yep.
more partridge in here now.
Yep.
This is classic sort of grouse management. These patch openings circled around. I think we should sneak along right through the full effect of what's inside. See some of the stumps in there. Don't worry, Brooke.
Some of this
was
ground
not to just harass you all day out here.
Some of this ground cover is perfect too.
Well, you got ash, you got wood fern, you got hay-scented fern, you've got raspberries.
You can walk through this forest, unlike some of these, company land cuts. But this still leaves a lot for nesting, ground nesting birds, squirrels.
Drumming logs.
Yep.
Look at that stump sprout, red maple. That's like a salad bar. The deer were just chowing on it.
Deer, moose.
More in the woods.
He might have noticed the last one, but he missed that one.
Okay, game on.
You got everything. You got a little bit of sunlight in here. You got blackberries
right
coming.
In the center, on the edges, it's more shady. Look at that regeneration.
Yep.
I mean, it is like, I'm a buck. I'm going to run through there and lose this clown who's on me, right? How many times have I lost my hat going through here?
If it's 90 degrees, you're going to be in the shade.
And then there's that.
If you're a fawn, a doe, she's going to leave her where it's thick, where she's safe.
Happy to see the ash. We don't know what its future is here on the landscape with the emerald ash borer killing them. Like to see that's hopeful. But there's a bunch of ash that's regenerated. If you can see past the ash and the striped maple, there's some yellow birch, and there's a nice little dense pocket of sugar maple saplings coming up in here. Right now, it's the winners so far in this race to take advantage of the new opportunity that was created for the logging. The winners right now are these aspen. You see this popple, right? And so that's incredible how fast they have sprouted up since the overstory was removed. And they're the pioneers. They're going to jump into this opportunity. They live fast and die young. Down the road, they'll die out 60, 70, 80 years and fall over, break before that even. And so that's why it's important to have this ash is kind of intermediate in its shade tolerance. The aspen's like full sun, right? They're going to go busters. The ash, pretty good in that full sun, and it's racing with the aspen right now, and it's more intermediate. But the sugar maple and the beech, they have more shade tolerance, and their strategy is to kind of come up below these guys, wait them out, and then become the future canopy.
Yeah.
So this is a classic example of restarting, initiating with this flush of regeneration, which is fantastic to see, a mix of species, even some pin cherry in here. They're an interesting story because their seed was buried here. The seed will remain viable in the soil for decades. Since the last time either a windstorm or a patch cut or some opened this up and there were pin cherries here, they fruited, they 30 years are over. They drop their seed and it remains viable in the soil, but not sprouting. Waiting for what? They don't want to sprout when there's a sugar maple forest over it. Wait till that gets blown over or harvested, and then they start to jump up. Yep. Classic. It's every organism out here has a way of being and a strategy for survival, and the trees don't all do it the same way. There's a lot of different ways to survival and success. And pin cherry is very different. Laying dormant in the seed for 80 years, I mean in the soil, 60, 80 years before saying, okay, now it's our chance again. Similarly, these aspens, poplars, their strategy is to, incidentally, the rubus here, the raspberries and blackberries have that same kind of buried seed strategy.
I think what you've just pointed out too, right? I mean, look how healthy those blackberries are. But yet right next to them, look how healthy these raspberries are.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, come back in here.
Right.
I picked a bunch last summer in here, actually.
Yeah.
Fistful walking through.
No, it's good.
Anyway, it's just a stark contrast to that, but that we created this by killing and some trees, by cutting some trees. Now, it's important to connect that. We're not just doing it to create this. This is great, but there's other benefits. We also produced wood to meet our collective massive demand for wood products and other forest products in our lives. And so it's honest, it's realistic, and we're saying, why should we supply firewood or flooring or trim or cabinetry materials from the Baltics or from the Amazon when we grow it here? And we can keep the money locally, and we can employ our neighbors in the supply chain and the value chain of forestry. So this is so exciting for me as a forester and as a hunter to do this kind of thing. But remember, put it in the context of we're not just out here whacking around just because we like to hunt or because we like noodling around the trees. We're meeting a demand that's real, and we're doing it locally, keeping the money locally. It's beautiful if you see the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Looks good.
Was a main skid trail. It's not skidding, which is dragging logs over the ground. This was using a forwarder, which is kind of like an off-road log truck with a cab, tracked, a bunk, and a loader, which is really slick. And they were forwarding to the main route below us here on this little trail, which has got now some striped maple sprouting up here and regenerating a little bit of beech. White pine, which is interesting because there's almost none out here, but there's a couple of big seed trees we've left, and I think that might be something more southerly, more warmer, and on this part where it's kind of dry soils, good place for white pine to grow, and it's looking more towards the future. All right, we're very careful about these. This is a very wet place in that this whole thing has these fingers of little. It's a big watershed. And we're at the low end, and there's all these little ephemeral streams and streams that are a little stronger and run only, and we had to be really careful. It's a real challenge in laying out a logging job because we avoid these. We don't go up them and down them, and we try not to cross them. And where we cross them, we cross very thoughtfully, carefully in places where it's more robust, and then we have to use crossing structures like bridges or corduroy that then is temporary. But anyway, they're everywhere out here, and it's a real challenge in laying it out. But it's important to stay away from them. And we've done that, including leaving some during the long run. But the approach is a good way to another path. I'm really glad we're going here because it reminds me. We've talked about the uncut, we've talked about the patches, blobs, the yellow blobs on the map. And another thing we did out here as part of the plan was between those patches, we did some thinning. So the patches are about regenerating, taking what's there away, starting over intentionally. Thinning is when you go and work with what's there. For the effect it has on the remaining trees, they have more room to grow. Presumably they grow faster then and better with more vigor. But we're also releasing some stuff that was in the understory as we thinned above it. So it's not a patch, but it's thinning. So it's less of an opening, and I'd like to just walk us through here and see the beautiful results of this little hardwood thinning that's improved foliage color and improved growth on the sugar maples basically all around us. But it's allowed the red spruce that was in the understory not growing, just hanging out. Look at it jumping up, and we'll look at the leaders, that top shoot, how they're taking off now. Look at how since we did the harvesting, they used to grow only that long each year, and now, boom, boom, boom. Look at that shoot up there on the top of that fir. That's not even done this year. It's going to be, might be 18 inches by the time the summer is over, all that new growth. That's because we opened it up, but not completely, just dig out. And out here you see a little bit more. Groups of trees removed as a thinning, and this boom, explosion of hardwood and the softwood, spruce and fir.
Can you look at this one right here and tell me how old it is?
I can estimate it. I mean, it's going to be really hard and a very rough estimate. Conifers, softwoods, they grow in whorls. And so that
whorls,
WHORLS,
as in like a circular.
Exactly. So they grow that way, up, out like that. And so each whorl of branches is a year. So it makes a handy way you can just see. Oh, you maybe say 5 or estimate 5, maybe 10 years before it got going. But then 1, 2, 3, 4, you count your way up to 60. This one is, this is this year. Last year, year before that, year before that, year before that, right? So this is all since cutting, and down here, thicker, smaller, shorter length, but before the cutting, it was overtopped. But here is where it gets really hard. We can count. So what do you got? We got 1 this year, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They're really close together. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and then I'd estimate probably another 10 we can't see. It's been growing here for 40 years.
No kidding. That little guy has been growing here for 40 years.
Waiting its time.
Just waiting for that sunlight to get to it.
Because everything that was here when it was a baby was faster at growing and could get going up above it. But spruce is pretty tolerant of shade and can hang out and do that.
Now, of this size, right? Let's say this thing, what'd you say, 35, 40 years old? That fir tree just on the other side of it, this one right here on the other side, how old do you think something like that is?
I don't know, and I'm not looking all the way down, but I'm gonna guess it's either close to this or actually significant, 25% younger. Like,
Yeah,
it just grows faster.
right.
It's able to grow faster for a
Due
while.
to the sunlight, the moisture that it's getting, and everything else.
Yeah.
Is something like that? Could that be?
It has a different strategy, and it grows a little faster to start, but it won't last as long as the spruce.
No, I know
yeah.
this spruce will outlive that.
300
thing.
years.
Yeah, yeah. And we often see it, in the moose world, where you have black spruce, it'll eventually overtake what fir is there.
Absolutely.
It'll kill that fir will go. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it basically goes into like a defense mode.
Did you hear that black-throated blue warbler? Beer, beer, beer.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't live in those woods. It can't. It's here now.
Yep.
It's so great. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of that shrubby layer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There he is. He's the male. He's singing, saying, "I got a boss territory. This place is awesome. Eat it, you suckers that have to live down there in the
Yeah.
stagnant woods."
Yep.
All right, how
That's
we doing?
pretty amazing that tree is that old.
By one forester's estimate, but it's reasonable estimate. Ash, very good ash year. I love my little in the red spruce. White ash.
This is a good example of
Moose run.
good example of your different forest types right here.
Nice little stand of woods with kind of stagnant. They're kind of hanging in a spot. Not much going on. Zero understory. Zero mid-story. Very minor understory. Should be thousands of seedlings in here, and there might be a couple hundred.
But yet.
So behind us, we came out of a patch and then a thinning, which shows very nicely from here, with a forwarder trail between us. So that's more like a very small linear patch. That's the ash regen there. Patch, thinning, forwarder trail, linear patch, uncut. Now we're going to head down here, and I hope the camera can see. You can see from here an explosion of regrowth in like a 2-acre patch cut that we put in. Which is, that's a big change for people to see.
Right.
And when it happened at first, do it in the winter to protect the ground. The spring comes and people go, what happened here? That's why we need to be on it and be there to help explain it. And, I've told you that I've had this experience of bringing people here who are, I don't want to be cutting in my woods, but like songbirds and wonder why they don't have any in their woods. So I brought them over here, and they were like, listen to all the birds. Yeah. They don't want to walk through that brushy growth, and it's going to be that way for 20, 25 years until it starts to open up again and differentiate. But that's why we do it in patches. We don't do the whole thing that way. We're trying to mix it up out here. And some of these places we're never going to cut. They're going to be whatever they are as long as they'll go. It's a mixed mosaic of young, middle, late middle-aged, old, wicked old at some point. That's the plan. On, the town forest, over 1,500 acres. It's sizable enough we can kind of do it all. Most of the forest is left alone, but in these areas we've identified, we're trying to manipulate them in these really thoughtful ways that are climate smart, they're economically viable, they're ecologically based, and they have these many impacts, positive benefits for habitat for all, not just game species, but game species and non-game species, even likely some threatened or very rare and special species. But the success that we're seeing and more importantly hearing in keeping common songbirds common is something we should all be wicked proud of. You got it all right here. Patch, thinning, linear gap for a trail, uncut. We got stream buffer, uncut. Let's head down and have a closer look and maybe core a tree that is in that patch to see if it's responded to the growing opportunity. As a kid, when I started to really get it turned on by the woods, there was stuff like this that it's amazing I'm alive and my buddies are, because we'd call them Sasquatch trees and we'd shake them and try to break them. It's a standing dead tree. That's freaking dangerous. You just get it going, the top snaps, comes down and spikes you in the head. We did this endlessly. But now I know, no, it's not, this dead tree is not competing with any other trees. People say, oh, cut all the dead ones. Why? They're not in the way. Because
they're not taking up anything.
They're not taking up, they're not capturing any light, they're not pulling up any water or nutrients.
Yet there's tons of things that
living all in them and through
live
them.
in it,
Yep.
thrive,
Hang out on them. Yep.
spiders.
So it's not as simple as, oh, we could just cut the dead trees.
Yep.
But I'm really, again, happy forester time. The plan was to come in here and hope to make that, which is nice little middle-aged, less than middle-aged hardwood stand with nothing much going on in the mid-story or understory, and turn it into that, which is, yep, not much going on in the overstory. We left a few sentinel trees, a big old white pine, a couple of them, and a white pine and a red spruce as seed trees and a little shade, but otherwise removed the overstory and turned simplified, somewhat sterile, certainly kind of stagnant for, we could stick like this for decades. We jump-started the reinitiation of a new age of forest, and that is a mix of native species that are doing great. And with them comes whole new habitat features, and that's attracting a bunch of new species that were not here prior, particularly a range of songbirds. From that black-throated blue warbler to mourning warblers, and on the list goes. Be curious to find a tree within and core it. What do you got?
That's your seedling trees. That one of those is your white pine. That's
Yes.
why you're seeing the seedlings
Elsewhere.
over yonder,
Yes.
and some of them popping up in here.
Yep. Yep.
Now
Hermit
these
thrush.
trees,
Another white pine over here. Yep.
these trees you've left for the pure purpose of seeding everything around it, and these will die off in time.
Over time, eventually they'll give it up or they'll blow over,
Yep.
and we're fine with that. They add, that's the deadwood component of standing dead they'll become, and then eventually they fall over and they're down dead as they decompose, providing places to live and habitat sources.
When they come down, they'll create a canopy underneath them.
Exactly, as this other forest grows up around it, right. Yep. But so they are largely there as seed makers, tree makers, to produce seed, to grow new trees in the future, and to feed birds and small mammals that eat those seeds and fruits, and to provide just a little bit more vertical structure in an otherwise big opening that something could go up and think of a raptor perching up there and hunting for rodents, say, in the opening. They ought to be thanking me.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to say that.
This is.
That's a great. There's those standing trees residual trees. All I'm saying is, yes, they're to produce seed that feeds things and makes new trees, but they have other reasons for keeping them. We have other reasons for keeping them.
This cut is what, 7 years old?
Yep.
Look how high that is.
Exactly.
I mean, that's 12, 15 feet.
Yes, they go.
Some of those are more.
They're saying,
Some
yeah,
of
let's
those
go
are
get
easily
it.
16, 18.
A race to the sun. And they're all fighting it out. And the aspens are winning. They're the fastest to jump up.
But there's some red maple in there.
Oh yeah, there's ash and sugar maple and fir and spruce, a little white pine. You want to core into a tree and see how that works?
Yeah, let's check it out.
I'm going to use a classic forestry tool called an increment borer, which is a specialized drill and bit, brace and drill bit to with an extractor to go in, drill into the tree, and then use pull out it's a kind of a pencil-sized core from within the tree, so as to get a sense of. Certainly, you can count the rings, and that can tell you how old it is at this height above ground. And it also gives you a sense of the relative size of the rings, and you can see if it's growing slowly or if it's increased in growth. And that's what we're guessing here, is that this red maple on the edge of this patch cut, likely, we're betting that the core will show that the growth rate has increased since the cutting. Let's find out. Believe me, if it doesn't show that, I have several dozen explanations. That's a joke. Okay. 3 parts. Pop that sucker in there. Orange flagging, so when you drop it, you can find it. That's like a $170 piece of equipment right there, so we don't like to just go leaving them in the woods. Aiming for the center of the tree. Drilling in slightly upward so that if anything is accumulating water, it would drain out. Because this is an injury to the tree, and a lot like sugar maple tapping, trees show an enormous ability to wall off that injury, limit it to here. And that's why you can keep tapping a tree after you've tapped it for years. When do I get to the middle? I don't want to go all the way through, just to the middle, right?
Just to the middle.
Because that 10th ring on the other side of the middle is the same as the 10th ring on this side. Joey, am I anywhere near close to half?
Yeah, you got a little bit more to go.
Inch?
Yeah, I would say.
That's a good bit of steel right there.
Yeah, you're pretty good.
We'll give it a little bit more. Oh, push our luck. Hopefully we can get it out of the tree. This is a big hit with school kids, I'll tell you what. Of all ages. That extractor in. Back her off. Now, you guys, everybody has to think good thoughts. So this is not always successful. I pull the extractor out. I feel like I didn't get a bite. Get some bark. And no core. Fear not, ladies and gentlemen. We can try to salvage. I'm not sure why. We got nothing. It does happen. See, you were thinking good thoughts that time. Brooke was thinking 200-pound deer.
I was thinking chainsaw.
Look at that. Out it comes. So we're gonna start here, realize we lost a little bark on that first try and maybe the last year. It's dirty. I'm gonna twist it. Try to see those better. You start to see the rings here. So it was growing really slowly. And at about the time of the harvest, it jumped in the 7 years since. And you can see that through the core. So this opening on its east and part of its south side gave this red maple way more access to light when we removed the competing trees near it. And it's translating that into faster diameter growth. getting bigger faster and having enough energy to do all the things it needs to do. An increment core. Pretty cool. If we got all the way to the center, you'd see the ring start to turn the other way. We could count our way back and age it.
I'd like to see, can you point out where you can see that difference?
Slow growth, slow growth, slow growth. And see where it just gets cleaner here? That's when it really started to grow fast. You see the 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. And, you know, the rings, it went from having, here it took 15 years to grow an inch, and here it grew an inch in 4 years. Souvenir. Back her out. Thank the tree. And move on.
And that didn't hurt the tree whatsoever.
Listen, any tree is going to be better off without putting a hole in it. Okay? It just is. But they are built to withstand all kinds of injuries and things. And so, like we've said, and shown in the sugar, put a hole in the tree to tap it. The tree has this ability to, that's a hole. And it's not going to stop being a hole. It doesn't heal, but it seals. Trees don't heal wounds like we do, but it seals it. It builds a wall all around it and says, yep, you're done. And so the microorganisms that start to decay it, they'll do that, but they can't get in any farther. It walls off and compartmentalizes. And so it'll close over. This will grow over it, and just like tapping holes do in sugar woods. They close over. Tap hole closure is a way of measuring tree health. If they're closing over within a year or two, you got a good growing tree that's not slowing down. If it takes them 5-6 years to close a wound, something's wrong, right? Well, that's a great tour about. I love, we're on the edge of one of the last patches that we visited. You can see the reserve tree, a big white pine that we kept out there for seed source, tree maker, animal feeder, structural element. But the majority of that patch, though, is now regrowing in this dense explosion of forest vegetation and regrowth of native species of quite a mix, from northern hardwoods like sugar maple, red maple, beech, aspen, ash, black cherry. It's all happening in there, along with red spruce and balsam fir and a little bit of white pine, which was the point, and we had a great chance to see a bunch of that today. It's a success so far, and it's translating into improved habitat for a broader range of species than were benefiting prior. And then you swing over here, by the way, we're in the middle, we're accommodating recreational use. Very, very popular biking and hiking trail now through Sterling Forest, which is eyeballs and people to share the story with and to help grow understanding of good forest management and habitat enhancement. And on the other side here, of course, is the uncut existing condition that we were experiencing in here, with not much in the simplified forest, with not much in the understory, a little bit more in the mid-story here than other places we visited, but it's still a good example of kind of the relatively simple, somewhat stagnant. I mean, no forest is stagnant, but it's kind of stuck in a stage of development that doesn't have a lot of diversity or complexity going on, which is why we tried to jumpstart that in these patches throughout a portion of Sterling Forest. Great examples of good work, thoughtfully applied. I want to give credit to the logger on this. I mentioned Dan Kilborn from Vermont Land Trust, who partnered with me in marking and laying it out and overseeing it. The logger was Graham Leitner as the logging contractor with a cut-to-length harvester and forwarders. And they are to be commended, he and his crew, because it was a tough winter job, difficult access, and they did a really nice job in the woods with no residual damage and an efficient approach to the work. Great story. Happy hunting.